Salam, hello everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. We are so glad those of you were able to make it. We apologize for some of the issues that we ran into on the original date and time for this webinar, which was on Wednesday. The Zoom platform was down, unfortunately, and we had to reschedule for today's event. But we're so happy that you all have made it. Grateful that there's so much interest and that folks are taking the time to learn more about the ever-changing landscape of what's going on for our communities right now. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Omar Aziz. I'm the Executive Director for AACO, the Afghan-American Community Organization. And I'm going to start us off by, and I'll get a chance to introduce all of our panelists today, but want to make sure that I give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing during our call. So we'll start with some introductions. We'll pass it on to Bilal Askaryar to talk a little bit about some of what's happening on a federal and national scale. And then Arash Azizzada will talk about some community responses and advocacy. And then we'll spend a bulk of our time with Spojmie Nasiri talking about what it is that what are knowing your rights and what are some of the things that we need to know in regards to the legal policies and updates that are happening. And then we'll close and have some time for Q&A at the end. And I just want to start by thanking our partners, the folks that have dedicated their time and their energy and has supported us in co-sponsoring this work. So Acacia, the Acacia Center for Justice, Five Pillars organization located out in the Bay Area, JIRA, based out of Sacramento, Afghans for a Better Tomorrow, who's a national Afghan-American organization, NorCal Resist, based out of Sacramento, and Nowruz Media, who's done a lot of great work to helping get our message out and getting the word out for this. So thank you to all of our partners that have helped make today's webinar happen. I'll start by introducing our organization, Afghan-American Community Organization, or AACO. Our vision is supportive, empowered, and engaged Afghan-American community. And some of the work that we do kind of spreads around four different areas: academic and professional development. So we offer Afghan-American scholarships. We do community building. So folks might know us from the Afghan-American Conference. We host every year a 3-day conference for 400 to 500 Afghan Americans. Our work around access and advocacy, and this is where our legal education and outreach and community service work happens, and under this umbrella, and then also supporting Afghanistan and helping us with, we support hospitals and surgeons and the work of healthcare in Afghanistan through our organization. And so for today's conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about the legal landscape of what's going on for our communities right now, and some of the challenges and the uncertainty that's happening around immigration and travel and all of those things. So our panelists, we're really grateful for our amazing panelists today. We have Arash Azizzada from Afghans for a Better Tomorrow, Bilal Askaryar, who's the Director of Communications for Acacia Center for Justice, and Spojmie Nasiri, who's an immigration attorney and on the board of directors for AACO, the Afghan-American Community Organization. Arash is a published author and has done a lot of really great work through many different media outlets and has been doing advocacy and filmmaking for the community for many years. Bilal has also written for NPR, the New York Times, and many other places to help advocate for the Afghan-American community. In his previous work, I know did some really great work with Turquoise Mountain, helping and other spaces for advocacy for the Afghan community, and Spojmie Nasiri as a champion and immigration attorney for the community and has been around for many years and supporting us and supporting our work. So we're really grateful to have them here to speak on some of the issues that are happening today. Just a quick disclaimer: the need is really great, as evidenced by the overwhelming reception to this event, and that folks are really looking to get more information, but there is oftentimes more unknown than there is known, and so we're doing our best to provide the most up-to-date information. We don't have all the answers and don't know everything right now, but we will do our best to share as much as we can. And then lastly, we unfortunately we can't support and help individual cases, But so the information that we are going to provide is going to be general, but we hope it's relevant for you all, and we will be recording this and sharing this out widely, and we'll email all of you that after this event is done. But please feel free to use the Q&A feature on the Zoom. You can send us a message through the chat feature as well. The chats will go to the hosts and panelists as well, so we'll get them. So to get us started, I want to pass it on to Bilal Askaryar to give us a little sense of like what's happening right now, and what we're seeing on a federal and national scale.
Thank you so much, Omar, and thank you to everyone for joining us today about how we can protect ourselves and better inform ourselves about what's going on in the world of immigration and how the current United States government is treating immigrants. I'm going to go over the state of play generally, talking about the refugee resettlement and the lawsuit that is currently working its way through the courts, asylum, conditions at the border and detention, and targeting of individuals for their political beliefs or perceived political beliefs. And also want to highlight what's going on with unaccompanied kids, specifically unaccompanied kids from Afghanistan. The Acacia Center for Justice, where I work, is a national nonprofit that upholds equal justice and due process for immigrants, particularly unaccompanied kids and immigrants in detention, who are working their way through the legal immigration system. I'll also talk about some things that haven't happened yet, but based on what we know from the previous Trump administration and credible sources, what we can expect to come down the road. So, as many of you may know, that one of the first actions the Trump administration took was to immediately halt refugee resettlement into the United States. And there are 10 refugee resettlement agencies in the United States, and some of them brought a lawsuit called Pasito versus Trump I believe, in the state of Washington. And the court ordered the government to come to compliance with previous orders to resume refugee resettlement and restore funding to resettlement agencies, but the government hasn't really taken any tangible or meaningful steps to comply with that court order. The courts have specifically required the administration to process and resettle tens of thousands of refugees who were conditionally approved to come, including Afghan refugees. But we know that those people are in limbo now. And I also want to talk about refugees who were resettled in the last days of the Biden administration and the very first days of the Trump administration. We know, working with our refugee resettlement partners, that the State Department was expediting the processing of refugee families to bring in as many people into the United States before an anticipated attack on the refugee resettlement program. And now, with all of this funding cut off, those refugees, those newly resettled refugees, are probably in some of the most dire situations that you can imagine. As a refugee resettled in the United States, you have access to certain housing and financial assistance, but that assistance has been cut off, and so those recently resettled refugees, are facing eviction notices. And it's really important to, if you can, find out which offices, refugee resettlement agencies are in your local community, to find out if you can help them with those newly resettled families. Because every day we hear about families facing eviction or losing their health care or just not being able to make their ends meet, which is really quite tragic and heartbreaking. The administration is also proposing significant cuts to refugee and humanitarian programs in upcoming budget negotiations, including cuts to the Department of Health and Human Services, where the Office of Refugee Resettlement is housed. And the proposal would cut funding for ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement, and local and funding for core integration services for newcomers like Afghan SIVs and unaccompanied children. There's also a separate April 14th report that outlined the administration's proposal to slash the State Department's budget, including plans to close out Enduring Welcome, the Enduring Welcome program that continues to evacuate and resettle Afghans who remain at risk as a result of their support or cooperation with the United States. This is, I don't have to tell this audience, a complete abdication of the United States promise to Afghans who worked with the United States. Um, and quite concerning. Additionally, I want to zoom out and say I've been talking about how these attacks are affecting the Afghan-American community, but I want to say we may be, kind of a canary in a coal mine, but we're also not unique or exclusive in this regard. We have seen other communities come under attack. We are seeing other communities come under attack. For example, the same day that TPS, Temporary Protected Status for Afghanistan, was revoked, 10,000 Cameroonians also lost their temporary protected status. And we know, as you know, in the national news, there are abductions of people like Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeysa Öztürk, who were abducted by ICE for their perceived political beliefs. But we also saw here in Maryland, where I am, the abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who had no criminal history, but was abducted, and the government conceded that they wrongfully abducted him and sent him to El Salvador. And I just want to say that what is happening in immigration right now is in flux. Much of this law, as you'll hear from our experts coming forward, Spojmie John especially, you'll hear that your rights and obligations under this law, but regardless of whatever theoretical legal framework there is, the government is showing that it's uh, no longer no longer carefully following its obligations. And, especially when you are traveling, as Arash will get into, you have less rights in your interactions with the government. There's a 100-mile zone from any border, any port of entry in the United States. So you can imagine 100 miles from the border from Canada into the United States, 100 miles from the border of Mexico into the United States, or also even any international airport, where Customs and Border Protection do have enhanced ability to check your devices, to stop and question you. And so this is it's not a time to panic as an Afghan-American community, but it is a time to build power, and make sure that you know where your loved ones are, where they're going, checking in, making sure that they arrive where they're supposed to be safely. So what can we do? I think the biggest thing that we can do is continue, obviously to build that power internally as a community, but also this is a time to work with other communities, other immigrant communities, to make sure that our voices are heard, that elected leaders hear from us, not just as Afghans, but also as immigrants, as people who, and Americans who care about the rights of other people. Immigration is not about visas or family migration. It is about who we want this country to be, fundamentally. And so, these attacks on democracy, it's no question that immigration is at the forefront. It's time to reach out and speak to your elected leaders, and like I said, build power within your community. But I also want to flag one discrete action that everyone here can take, is to make sure you know the status of your local police department's relationship with ICE. There is a thing called 287G agreements, which is there's a memo by the Department of Homeland Security that says any local police department can enter into a 287G agreement with ICE, and it effectively deputizes all police officers in that department to become ICE agents. This is candidly terrifying, and there are ways to push back on it. You can work with your elected representatives in your municipalities to make sure that your police department is not engaging in these agreements with ICE, because what happened to Mahmoud Khalil, Rumeysa Öztürk, they were targeted by ICE agents, but now can you imagine any run-of-the-mill police officer stopping you, questioning you, asking about your citizenship status? So do look up whether or not your local municipality has that agreement with ICE. And if they don't, now is the time to proactively reach out to your city council, your local police department, members of Congress to make sure that they do not engage in those agreements. Finally, I know Spojmie John will also talk about the Muslim and travel ban, but also one thing that we heard from one thing we know that happened in the first Trump administration were the very preliminary discussions about denaturalization. So, for example, I'm a naturalized citizen. I was born in Afghanistan, but I was naturalized when my parents became citizens before I turned 18. And people, we know that those discussions happened in the first administration. I wouldn't be surprised if they get, advance much more in the second Trump administration. So we'll continue to keep you updated. And thank you, Omar. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Bilal. At this time, I'm going to invite Arash Azizzada to come up to share a little bit about what communities are doing locally and how folks can continue to advocate.
Thanks, Omar. I'm gonna share my screen. Hope can people see that? Let's see. Maybe not.
And I'll just let folks know that they can put your questions. There's a Q&A feature. If you have any questions you want to share, we'll do our best to address them either during the webinar or afterwards. And then we will also have Spojmie John's presentation in both English and Dari for folks that would like to hear from the different languages. So Arash, you can go ahead and begin.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. Thank you to AAC. Thank you, Bilal, for kind of setting the stage and the context for which we're operating. New restrictive policies, all of which are deep attacks on our immigrant and refugee communities. Everybody in the Afghan-American community has some roots and ties to our community here. And my name is Arash. I'm the co-director of Afghans for a Better Tomorrow. We've existed for about three and a half years. And I'm going to talk about some community-led organizing work that we are doing and some best practices as we found ourselves in this moment, which is, like I stated, an attack on our community, but also operating under a guise of state repression and much more restrictive policies that are impacting our community members, our family, and our loved ones. And so this is a kind of a snapshot of the work that we are doing currently in New York that we've been doing for about two years. This was a response to many Afghan new arrivals, asylum seekers coming to New York. So with the work we are doing, we have monthly healing spaces. We are sharing resources and direct aid from clothes to cell phones, as well as like legal aid. We do referrals out for benefits and services to other organizations. And we provide direct services ourselves. And we do that in a language access way for our community. Our entire staff is led by Afghans. Our staff is composed of 4 Afghan-American women and myself. And we lead forward this work, especially in this moment when our community members are nervous, are deeply anxious, and really worry about their continued safe being and well-being here in this country. And so some of the pictures you see there are some of the work we have done in partnership with other organizations, with legal service providers, with community members, and different places of worship such as churches throughout New York City. So what have we done since January 20th, when we knew there'd be this renewed attack on us. Some of us were here during the first Trump administration. I remember having conversations with Bilal 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and being out on the street to protest his policies back then. And so I wanted to quickly talk about what you can do collectively within your networks, within your communities, on a local level. And the example I'm going to give you is what we are doing in New York. We've built a type of rapid response network. And that is to say that, like, we've put together community members, we've put together advocates, people that are in the movement with us, as well as attorneys and other partners, as well as attorneys who are willing to work with us on a volunteer basis, on a pro bono basis. And we kind of put together a team to be able to say, if something happens, how are you going to respond? And so last Friday, when we received parole terminations letters, as many of you did, or loved ones or people in your community that received that letter, we put that machine into action. We reached out to our attorneys, we got legal briefings, and started translating material into Dari and Pashto, and made sure that over the weekend we were briefing to our community members who were nervous, who were reaching out to us, and we made sure that they received the latest guidance. And in many ways, it's the advice that you will be getting later on from Spojmie. But the top thing was, contact your immigration attorney, carry your documentation with you, and make sure that you abide by all laws and regulations. Another thing we've done is secure our communications and data. So any information or communication we're doing with our community that can be considered sensitive, or have information about folks who are in our communities, we've moved them over. And we already had really good practices, and we've taken it up a notch. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about what folks who are attending today could kind of do. And I wanted to just emphasize, you might be scared. Some people are petrified. It is okay to feel that way, but this is not a time to panic. It is a time. It's a time to attend webinars like this, but it's time to organize. And so it is a moment that calls for us to kind of come together and figure out what we can do. And so hopefully the part that I'm speaking about today will be useful to you and your local communities throughout the country. So what can you do? You can join an Afghan organization. You can reach out to us, for example, if you're in New York or places like San Diego. And I've listed some other networks, some mutual aid group, AFBT, that's us, 5 Pillars organization, and NorCal Resist are in Debray, and Project Anar and Afghan Refugee Relief, for example, are also groups that do work throughout the country. And I want folks to think about, if you're not in need of assistance, but you want to lend a hand, okay, think about what skills you have. Is it language access? Are you a fluent Dari or Pashto speakers? Do you have a network of people who have resources? Do you know pro bono attorneys? Is there digital and social media work that you have experience in? Can you accompany somebody to an ICE check-in? Can you accompany somebody to an asylum hearing? Can you accompany somebody to even something they're scared of attending? In New York, we are building an accompaniment program so that folks who don't have durable status or feel very nervous about the permanent status that they're seeking, we are pairing them up with somebody who has more durable status, a U.S. naturalized citizen like myself, or U.S. born citizens who can accompany them. And so often they're not even Afghan. They're just members in the Iranian community or the Muslim community who want to lend their hand and show some solidarity. And so this is a little bit for folks who are trying to figure out a way to be useful. It's about offering hope, standing in solidarity, building some resistance that is grassroots and is deeply tied to our community. And another 2 things that I've been sharing with folks, which is, if you can, donate monthly to an Afghan org. Many of us either predate the 2021 withdrawal, or like us, we started in 2021. And we are only able to do the work and the organizing that we talk about, provide legal services, or have this webinar with your assistance and your monthly donations. And if you can, consider sharing that with your network. But really also about having a plan, whether it comes to traveling, whether it comes to attending a protest, or taking part in some kind of community organizing to try to protect folks, right? That's really what we are talking about. How can we defend and protect our newest community members, and what role do each of us have to play in that? So I want to talk about basic security. If you're talking about attending a protest, traveling internationally, if you're talking about somebody who doesn't have durable status or temporary status, or somebody who's undocumented who has fallen out of status potentially, there's tons of cases of our community members, but also other immigrant and refugee communities where that has happened. Consider how you're communicating with that. Are you using Signal? Signal is considered by technology experts as much safer than WhatsApp and iMessage. And the second thing we've done, for example, we've instituted this as an organizational practice, and this predates obviously January 20th and this new administration. But think about, why am I retaining data on my phone? Do I have policies in place digitally on my phone where I can say this will self-delete? So when we have a team communication about something that we are planning, that message will delete itself in either a week or 4 weeks. And so we really recommend using Signal and CryptPad for note-taking. Any sensitive information you might be sharing about clients, about community members, about your family, about documents that you might have, consider using Signal, consider using CryptPad, where you can take notes, and really instilling new new digital hygiene, and practicing that and having self-deleting practices. I think the best thing folks also consider in this time, do a risk assessment. So, my risk as a naturalized citizen over 10, 15 years ago is considerably less than somebody who is newly arrived. So think about Googling yourself, seeing what your profile is, and if you come up. So what we've seen also lately is that there's especially good practices, and Spojmie will really dive deeper into this when she speaks after me. But is it useful to have your social media profiles to either be deleted or to go on private? There's simple things you can do while traveling internationally, specifically to delete certain apps from your phone. For example, I have done a risk assessment for myself. I will be traveling internationally, and I will not be traveling with my own devices. I will not bring my laptop or my phone, knowing that I have doing community organizing work in the Afghan-American community in New York and elsewhere. And I know that if my device is to be taken by a CBP officer or a law enforcement officer, that poses a risk to my community members that I'm trying to help. And so really putting community first and thinking about that. And furthermore, another practice that I will be doing, I'm not taking my cell phone to a protest if I'm attending one, like the picture you're seeing from 2021 on the left. If it is a Palestine solidarity related event, think about the digital trail you're leaving. Think about the digital hygiene you can practice, because that not will only keep you safe, but it will keep your community safe. So those are some practices I'm going to share in the chat, and I will also share. Hopefully, I'll ask Omar to email out some practices specifically for the Signal app. We just like the best thing you can do today is to move your communications off iMessage, off WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta and Facebook, onto an app like Signal. And lastly, I would say, Bilal was talking about having rights afforded to you under the Constitution, things we thought we had, and knowing now that we're in a moment of repression, state levels oppression and suppression, and thinking about and repression, and what does that mean about rights that we are supposed to have and to be afforded to us. And so in this moment, I want to acknowledge we are scared, we are petrified. People are fearful for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our families, and for our newcomers. But I want to remind folks, this is not the first time we are facing this level of instability or oppression. It's not just that many of us were around for the first Trump administration, but we are Afghans. Many of us have fled fascism, war, ugliness elsewhere in the world, whether in Pakistan, Turkey, third countries around the world. And if you didn't, your parents did. So it's in our blood to resist, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly. Again, It's not a time to panic. I think this is a moment where we can organize. If you want to join a local community organization, today is the day to do so. So if you find yourself in a place like San Diego or specifically New York City, reach out to us. You know, if you sign our membership form today, we'll put you to work by tomorrow and help defend and protect our communities. And that's it for me. Thank you so much. Back to Omar.
Thank you, Arash, to the work that you're doing in Afghans for a Better Tomorrow. And we will pass it on to Spojmie to talk about knowing your rights. And I can share my screen and get your slides up.
Well, we can put those slides later, Omar John. I don't need this right now. I'm going to do that towards the end. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much to my co-panelists. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I know we had a Zoom outage on a couple of days ago, and we scrambled. So I really appreciate everyone here. We were going to do the presentation in English, Pashto, and Dari. We confirmed that none of our attendees today are here that need Pashto. So I am going to be keeping it in both English and Dari. سلام علیکم عزیزای من، میمان ما که اینجا امروز هستین. شما نام از سپوجمie است. ما وکیل مهاجرین هستم. بسیار تشکر که شما اینجا امروز کاتی ما هستین. ما می پاورپوینت پرزنتیشن ما در پشتو دری انگلیسی میکردم، مگم دوستای ما اینجا امروز پشتو کس نیست. ما پرزنتیشن در انگلیسی میتونم، هم در دری میتونم. بسیار تشکر از آمدنتان. So what I want to do is I have a lot to cover, and I want to leave about 25 minutes or so for the Q&A, which is more important, questions to answer for you guys. I'm going to do this in a mode where I'll do English Dari for each topic. I have a lot to cover, so I apologize if I'm speaking a little bit fast. I'll try to condense everything. And be concise so that both in English and Dari everyone can understand. تشکر میمان ما که امروز هستین. ما چندین تاپیک ها هست که مهم است در از کمیونیتی ما که بسیار تشویش دارن. در اون موضوع ما گپ میزنم، اگر گوشش میکنم که گپ زیاد نمیکنم و زیاد تیز نمیکنم، از خاطر که من میخوام که انفورمیشن مهم است امروز. So the topics I'm first going to talk about is with the hot topics of what are the issues affecting the Afghan community right now. And then I'm going to transition over to many questions that our community has regarding either citizens, lawful permanent residents, and those with non-immigrant visa status. What is the status and the advice I can give in terms of traveling and electronic devices, as it was covered briefly by both Arash John and Bilal John. So I'm going to just dive right into it. The first topic of concern for many people, and some of these topics are new for our Afghan community, so bear with me if you already are aware, but I'm being repetitive. First topic of concern that I still get emails, our communities, our organizations that are here today are asking about is the status of the P1, P2 refugee programs. As we know, a couple months ago, the Trump administration halted all resettlement, refugee resettlement, including the P1, P2. So if our fellow Afghans or other nationalities that are potentially eligible for P1, P2 or other refugee programs have not entered the United States, then potentially those programs are halted, whether they're in Afghanistan, Qatar or anywhere else. Those P1, P2 are not processing at this time. It was initially given for 90 days, but there hasn't been any update. So we may potentially see that it'll be indefinite, where refugees are not able to enter the US on P1, P2 or other categories. دوستای ما بسیار زیاد سوالای افغانای ما هست که همین P1 P2 پروگرام ها چطور شد از دورانی که علی ترامپ هسته. P1 P2 یا هر راه دیگه که رفیجی ریسیتلمنت پروگرام ها بود، چند ماه پیش ترامپ ادمنستریشن کلی پروگرام کات کردن، گفتن به 90 روز. تا حال معلوم نیست که به چه وقت امی افغانای ما که در پاکستان است یا از راه افغانستان یا قطر، هر شهر که هستن اگر P1 P2 پروسسش خلاص شده باشه مگم در داخل امریکا نیستن، هیچ امکانی است که یا زورا اینجا در امریکا درای P1 P2 بیاین. میبینیم که در آینده چطور میشه مگم به آل کل پروگرام ها استاپ شده. The second question I get a lot about is the SIV programs. There's a lot of confusion regarding the SIV programs in terms of being able to come in. Please keep in mind that the SIV applications are still processing no matter where. The special immigrant visa translation programs are available for individuals to either apply and continue with the process. What has changed is that there's no longer funding supporting through IOM for the flights, for resettlement, for cost to reside in the United States. So again, I want to reiterate, if you have family members or you're helping the community or you're an advocate or a legal service provider, and the individual you're assisting is in the process of doing the SIV but coming into the US, you can continue. But as I'm sure we're all aware, it's going to be an extensive delay in the process. And they will have to, if they are granted the SIV status, they will have to pay for their own flights or have a nonprofit organization, possibly. I don't want to name anyone to put someone here, but there are some organizations assisting with the costs for both the flights and also possible resettlement in the United States. دوستای ما و آقایان ما که از راه SIV اپلیکیشن پیش بردن یا در افغانستان هستن یا شاید دیگه هستن تا حال داخل نشدن در امریکا، میتونن که کیس های SIV شان پیش ببره. منتها یک موضوع است که می ترامپ ادمنستریشن همی فندینگ برای تایره او خرج و اینجا ریسرامنت که در امریکا میکنن و فندینگ او را کٹ کردن، نمیتونن که از راه استفاده کنن. اگر کسی SIV گرفته باشن یگان NGO ارگانیزیشن ها در امریکا هستن یا شاید دیگه، میتونن که شما کچان تماس بگیرین که همی برای کاست فلایتش برشن بده که اینجا امریکا میاین، خانه کرا و چیزا سازن کمک کنن. بازم میگم که همی SIV پروگرام ها روان از راهشان کٹ نشدن، منتها همی فندینگ برای همی فلایت و چیزا نمیتونن که بکنن. The next hot topic I want to talk about is the I-730s. These are all the topics that I had over the last course of 3-4 weeks that I've been compiling from the concerns from the community. So that's why I'm calling them the hot topics. And feel free to put your questions in the chat, and Omar will let me know if there are any other hot topics. Now, many of our fellow Afghans over the course of the last couple of years, since 2021 with the fall of Kabul, have their family members, whether they're spouses, their children under 21 and not married. They are still in Afghanistan or in other locations. But if your asylum has been granted, you must and you should immediately file the form I-730. That process, as far as we know at this moment, is still continuing. There will be extensive delays, but unlike the P1, P2, that program has not been halted. So individuals should file the I-730 for their derivative family members to eventually be reunited with their families. Is going to be a long process. دوستای ما آقایان ما که خوشبخت هستن که از راه اسایلمشان قبول شده باشه، خانمایتان، شوهرایتان، طفلکایتان سن 21 ساله کمتر عروسی نکرده باشند، شما در افغانستان است یا قطر است یا شهر دیگه هستن، اگر اسایلم کیس شما قبول شده باشه، لطفاً همی فرم I-730 به فامیلایتان فایل کنین. امکان است که زیاد وقت بگیره، مگر اگر شما I-730 را فایل نکنین با فامیلایتان هیچ کارایتان پیش نمیره. بسیار مهم است که یک دفعه که اسایلمتان قبول شد، فامیلایتان هم در بین همی اسایلم اپلیکیشن مانده بدین، با وام میتونین که I-730 را پیش ببرید. The next topic I have, hot topic, is, as we've been hearing from this administration, that they've halted the asylum-based green card application, meaning that if your asylum was granted, then you should be applying for the green card within 1 year of getting your asylee status. And that's for your derivatives that are here in the United States, like your spouse and your children. At this point in time, the consensus from the American Bar Association, from the American Immigration Lawyers Association, is that you should continue to file your application for a green card, because potentially there's going to be lawsuits against this administration that This is the violation of, regulations that rightfully allow individuals to file. If individuals are not filing, and the consequences are your case is not going to go through once they lift that halting. And number two, a lot of organizations, immigration organizations, are bringing in lawsuits so that if your application is pending, you could potentially have a way of getting status. So again, if you got your asylum granted and your family's here, yourself, whoever, please continue to file the adjustment of status form I-45 along with the supporting documents to continue your a green card, getting your green card through the asylum status, which is the form I-45 and supporting documents. دوستای ما در کمیونیتی ما بسیار تشویش از افغانا که اسایلمشان اینجا قبول شده باشه یا فامیلایشان هستن که حتیشان یا خودشان ترامپ ادمنستریشن گفتن که ما حالا فعلا گرین کارد پروسس نمیکنیم. بسیار مهم است که دوستای ما کمی شما اگر اسایلمتان قبول شده باشه در 6 ماه یا زیادتر پسان با قانون 1 سال میتونه که کس گرین کارت فایل کنه، مگر میتونه که از 6 ماه بعد که اسایلمتان قبول شده باشه برای گرین کارتتان فایل کنین. از خاطر که امکان است با آینده امی ارگانیزیشن های از اینجا در امریکا ترامپ ادمنستریشن در محکمه میبره که یک بیقانون کار است. بازم اگر ترامپ ادمنستریشن امی گرین کارت اپلیکیشن ها رو پیش میبرن، باز کیستان وقتی ماندین پیش میبردین. از خاطر اگر شما اسایلمتان قبول شده باشه 6 ماه زیادتر وقت شده باشه، لطفاً با خودتان با فامیلاتان که اینجا هستن برای گرین کارت شما فایل کنین. The next hot topic is for the P1, P2s who are here. There, people ask me, like, do they have to apply for asylum? The answer is no. If you have P1, P2, then within 1 year of arrival on the P1, P2, you can go ahead and apply for your green card. I haven't had any information regarding whether the adjustment from a P1 to P2 and the green card has been halted or not, but nonetheless, if you're eligible within that time frame, go ahead, apply so that you can continue with your P1, P2 conversion to a lawful permanent resident status. دوستای ما و افغانای ما که از راه P1, P2 اینجا آمدن زیادشان تشویش دارن یا کنفیوژن هست که ما اگر P1, P2 گرفته باشم ما باید اسایلم فایل کنم یا گرین کارت. نه، وقتی که برای P1, P2 اینجا داخل شدین در 1 سال شما اکت دارین از راه ایمیگریشن امریکا که برای گرین کارت شخصی فایل کنین. تا حال ترامپ ادمنستریشن نگفتن که ما P1, P2 گرین کارت پیش نمیبریم، مگر فرق نداره اگر گفته باشه یا نگفته باشه. لطفاً وقتی که در مثال 1 سال برای گرین کارتتان فایل بکنین که باز برای آینده گرین کارتتان بیاین. The next topic that I want to talk about is the temporary protective status. As we know, the Trump administration on April 11th announced the termination of temporary protective status for Afghans and also Cameroonians. So we may be seeing the ending of the temporary protective status for a large number of people, and particularly for Afghans. The estimate that was given was approximately 15,000 people who will lose the ability to work legally in the U.S. and to remain legally in the U.S. So for those of you who may not know, what is temporary protective status? Well, temporary protective status was a protection by Congress that allows individuals to stay in the United States temporarily and to be able to legally work in the United States temporarily because of the conflict, disasters, or other extraordinary conditions that may qualify them for TPS. Please keep in mind that TPS is not a pathway permanently to the to get status. It's a temporary, which is the term says, temporary protective status. It's only to allow you for a certain amount of time, and then you can, if that TPS status is extended, then you can renew within that period of time continuously and be able to legally remain and work. So many of our fellow Afghans have gotten temporary protective status, and in addition, the humanitarian parole that, when Afghans were paroled in 2021, hundreds and thousands of Afghans, they had the humanitarian parole, which is a different way, but the benefits are similar to temporary protective status in that you're able to stay for a certain amount of time legally in the U.S. and then apply for a work permit. It was never meant to be a permanent pathway, which is why, I had the privilege of going to 7 of the 8 military bases, telling Afghans, when you leave the base, it's important that you have humanitarian parole, that you either apply for asylum, SIV based if you're eligible, or even some of people are eligible through family petitions, because if humanitarian parole ended, or if people came in through the temporary protected status, some people came in through the southern border, or some people came in later on through temporary protective status, that is very vital for this particular situation that we're seeing right now with the temporary protective status ending in May, June. These individuals are going to fall out. So now more than ever, it's very important that individuals go ahead, if you haven't applied for asylum, to please apply for asylum, because if temporary protective status goes and you have no status, there's a potential risk of being put into deportation, or even ICE coming to pick up individuals. We've seen that, for example, a gentleman in the Bay Area who had applied for SIV, he was denied SIV, he did not apply for asylum, and he was picked up by ICE, and now he's in a detention in Bakersfield. This is not to put fear, this is to the reality of what we're living, which Bilal John and Arash John talked about, the atmosphere that we're living in. So it's very, very important that individuals find a permanent pathway, whether SIV or asylum, particularly if these status end. دوستای ما، بسیار افغانای ما تشویش دارن که یا برای temporary protective status انجام دادن. temporary protective status معنایش است که یا عقد دارن که با قانونی در امریکا با چک وقت باشن، 1 سال 2 سال، یا با هر چک که temporary protective status وقت برتان داده، او هم عقد دارین که شما با قانونی در امریکا کار بکنین. بسیار مهم است که همین temporary protective status سال ترامپ ادمنستریشن گفتن که از اپریل 11 که TPS کیت میکنه برای افغانای ما، هم برای مردم ها که از کامرون هستن. temporary protective status بازم با کم وقت که عقد دارین امریکا با قانونی باشین، و هم میتونین که اجازه کار داشته باشین. و افغانای ما که از راه humanitarian parole آمده بدن، نامش دیگه است، مگم امی بنفیتش که استفاده میکنن هاین چی از temporary protective status، میتونن که با قانونی به یک وقت باشن، یا میتونن که کار بکنن با قانونی. وقتی که کابل سکوت شد، افغانای ما اینجا آمدن، در میلیتری بیسا ما رفته بودیم و همگی میگفتیم که شما وقتی که از بیس براین، بسیار مهم است که لطفاً اگر humanitarian parole آمده باشین، باید برای اسایلم فایل کنین یا SIV فایل کنین، یا اگر امکان باشه یک اپلیکیشن از طرف فامیلایتان اگر میشد. تا حال 20-25 است، 4 سال میشه، 3 سال میشه که دیر شده، افغانای ما تا حالی که humanitarian parole داشتن برای چی فایل نکردن. معلوم نیست که temporary humanitarian parole چه وقت برای افغانا کیت میشه، مگم temporary protective status که دارین، در امکان است در ماه می، جون یا کل کارایش بند کنن. از این خاطر بسیار مهم است که شما که یک وکیل گپ بزنین، ببینین که شما میتونین برای اسایلم یا SIV فایل کنین. از خاطر اگر شما TPS دارین کیت شما، امکان است که شما status نداشته باشین، باز آیس میتونه که بیاید. امی چند هفته پیش یک افغان ما SIV فایل کرده بود، SIVش قبول نشده بود، بعد از اسایلم فایل نکرده بود، هیچ status نداشت، آیس پیکاپش کرده بود اینجا در بی ایریا، بندی است حال در بیکرزفیلد دیتنشن سنتر. این من نمیگم که شما با خطر کنید که همه گیره بندی میکنم، من تا موضوع است اینجا که شما باید اگر TPS دارین یا humanitarian parole دارین که شما لطفاً یک اسایلم یک رای پرمننت فایل کنین. Let me take a deep breath for a second. So the other topic of concern is the that we just got for many Afghans who were getting the notices of termination notice letters that individuals were getting to depart the United States in 7 days. We did give out an important notice on that topic. So many people, and this notice was sent to over 900,000 people, and that was not just for Afghans or those undocumented, even U.S. citizen lawyers, U.S. citizen doctors, lawful permanent residents have been getting this notice. The American Immigration Lawyers Association has reached out to the Department of Homeland Security regarding the notice that was sent out on April 10th, telling people that they had to depart the United States within 7 days. Following the next day, we had a handful of people get the second notice that said, the notice was sent in error, please ignore it. Now, as an immigration attorney and an officer of the court, I cannot legally and ethically tell every single person that you should just ignore that notice. And I'm giving a disclaimer here that that is not what I'm saying. If we believe the notice may have been sent in error because even U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents are getting it, my legal advice and disclaimer is that before you take any action, that you speak with a licensed immigration attorney, not someone who does paperwork in the community, but an actual licensed immigration attorney before you take any actions. Second, the second notice that was sent out the next day clearly, now these notices do not have names, alien numbers, not addressed to anyone specific. They were just generic email that were sent out. Please be on the lookout for your email to see if you potentially get the second email regarding that you can ignore that notice. Not everyone is getting those. More people got the second notice. So that's pretty much the update I have. But again, if you only have TPS right now or humanitarian parole, it's very important that you file for some permanent relief. And just one other thing, if you have TPS or humanitarian parole and you have a work permit through that status, and then you apply for asylum, and within 6 months of filing the asylum, you are eligible to apply for a work permit. Please make sure that those individuals you're helping or yourself, that you apply for a work permit through that way, because if your TPS or humanitarian parole is terminated, you have a work permit through another way. So it's really, really important for me to give that advice. Again, don't leave the US without legal advice. The termination of the parole is different for each person. You may still be eligible for other benefits, and know that there are a lot of lawsuits going on right now pertaining to many of the different executive orders through this administration. دوستای ما بسیار افغانای ما تشویش داشتن که امی در اپریل ماه در اپریل 10 یک ایمیل به افغانای ما رسیده بود. امکان از 900,000 نفرام امی خط برشان آمده بود که یا باید از امریکا در 7 روز براین. باز یک روز بعد یک ایمیل دیگه آمده بود به یگان افغانای ما که او خط به قانونی روان شده بود، چی نکنین از Security Department of Homeland Security او خط روان کرده بود. امی لیگل ادوایسی من هسته که به هر نفر پیش از اینکه میگن که من میبرایم از امریکا، بسیار مهم است که یک وکیل تماس بگیرن کتشان. امکانی است که شما از ابایی تشویش بکنیم، مگر با قانونی من نمیتونیم بگویم که هیچ بیغم باشیم با او خط. موضوع این است که شما در ایمیلتان سعی کنین ببینین اگر یک دوم ایمیل برتان میآید از Department of Homeland Security که امی خط اول که برای شما روان شده بود با غلطی شده بود. امی خط که آمده بود به سیتیزنان بدن، به گرین کارت خودداران بدن. بسیار مردم های ایمیل گرفته بدن. حال فعلا ایمیلتان رو چک کنین، اگر بر شما نامده باشه حال فعلا امی وکلا از Department of Homeland Security پرسان کردن که شما یک مسیج بدین به کلی کمیونیتی که ایمیل با غلطی روان شده بود، شما بیغم باشین. دوم است اگر شما TPS دارین یا شما رای humanitarian parole او شما برای اسایلم فایل کرده باشین، بسیار مهم است بعد از 6 ماه یک دفعه که اسایلم فایل کردین لطفاً با ورک پرمیت از اون فایل بکنین، از خاطر که وقتی اگر TPS یا humanitarian parole کایت شد، باز میتونین که شما از رای اسایلم که ورک پرمیت گرفته باشین از اون را شما میتونین که استفاده بکنین. So those were the main topics that I wanted to sort of touch on. If you guys had any other hot topics that I didn't touch on, please put in the chat box. Omar will ask. I wanted to transition over now to, I'm sorry, the last thing was the travel ban. As we know that potentially Afghanistan will will be on that travel ban along with a dozen other countries. Like the first time around, the travel ban, Afghanistan was not on it. There were a lot of restrictions for individuals. For now, the advice is pertaining. So I want to be very careful how I say this. So when people are asking me as Afghans and their lawful permanent residents or their citizens, should I travel outside of the US? Well, we have two potential issues that you have to address within yourself and your discussion with your family. One is the travel ban that potentially can come out any day. It was postponed, and Afghanistan is on that travel list. So if you are a green card holder, legal advice consensus from the attorney is if you're on one of those travel ban, which is red, orange, yellow, particularly those countries, for now, do not travel as a lawful permanent resident because of the potential risk that there may be something when you're coming back in. The second thing is, which I'm going to talk about in more detail, is the electronic devices and travel in general for anybody who's a lawful permanent resident or that. So I want to make a clear distinction between when people are asking me, the travel ban, can I go? I'm a green card holder from Afghanistan, or or is it because of the electronics? So that's really important what I want to do. The other component I really wanted to touch on, and I'm hearing this all the time from the community, please understand that if you got your green card through SIV and you want to go back to Afghanistan, under the US laws, you are permitted to travel to Afghanistan as a lawful permanent resident. But there's the two things we want to go back to talk about is potentially the travel ban because you're a green card holder, and the electronic devices and the scrutiny that you're getting. And then number third is the safety of yourself because you served as a translator. Please understand that if you got your green card through asylum, never was a good idea or permitted, not just now, never was a good idea or permitted for you to travel back to your home country as a green card holder when you got it on asylum. Yes, I know, family says my mom, my dad, my uncle, my relative, everybody does it. Well, use your judgment. I'm the attorney giving legal advice, especially now. Do not travel as a green card holder who got a green card through asylum, because on your green card, it has always said the basis of your asylum. They're looking to deport people. They're looking to put people in deportation. Their goal is to deport 1 million people by the end of the year. That's what we're hearing. And they can't deport the 3 million criminals, so they're going to use every tactic to get people. So I want to say that right now for green card holders, for the various reasons I mentioned, please consider not traveling outside right now until we get more information. دوستای ما با travel ban که افغانای ما بسیار تشویش دارن، یک سه موضوع براتون ما تماس میگیرم که اول همی travel ban که طالب نبرآمده افغانستان است که امکان سرخ رنگ است، بسیار restricted است که اگه شما گرین کارت دارین از هر راه حال فعلا travel نکنین، از خاطر که امکان است که travel ban آمد افغانستان است، امکان است که یک ذره جنجالات چیزا بارتان شود. دوم گپ به است که شما اگر آل فعلا الکترونیک دیوایس تانه که شما در سوشال میدیا چی دارین با اون موضوع امکان است که برتان جنجال شود. سوم گپ است که امو افغانای ما که گرین کارت از رای SIV گرفتن هر وقت با قانونی یا میتونستن که افغانستان برن، مگر یک ذره خطر برتان میشه که شما ترجمان بدین. دوم گپ است که امی افغانای ما که امی گرین کارت از رای اسایلم گرفته هیچ وقت که ما 17-18 سال میشه وکیل هستم و هر کس میگیم که اگر اسایلم گرفته باشین از خاطر که اسایلم کس گرفتن که شما در خطر بودن نمیتونستین که افغانستان برین، با اسایلم که شما میرین در گرین کارت نمیشته کده که اسایلم گرین کارت گرفتین براتون جنجال میشه، امکانش که یا بگن که گرین کارت از رای غلطی به قانونی گرفتی، دروغ گفتی که شما خطر داشتین. هیچ وقت که کس تا که سیتیزن نباشه از رای اسایلم افغانستان نرن. خب بازم دیگه موضوع میگم که اگر گرین کارت داشته باشین حال فعلا اگر اسایلم گرفته باشین هر را نرین تا حالی که همی travel ban امکان است که بیایه. دوم گپ است که امکان است همی اسنادا چیزهایتان سوشال میدیا تان میبینه که شما برای گرین کارت هولدرها. سوم گپ است اگر شما هیچ به قانونی کار کرده باشین امریکا، drunk driving, domestic violence, child abuse، هر چی که شما یک کلان خورد، هر چی که باشه 10 سال پیش یا 15 سال پیش یا 5 روز پیش شما یک جنجال یا چی کرده باشین، پیش از اینکه سفر میکنین که یک وکیل بگیرین از خاطر او کارا که اگه کرده باشین، بسیار امکان است که جنجالا برتان شوه، شما در دیپورتیشن پس که میاین. ایگا پا بسیار مهم است. One thing I forgot to mention is for any green card holder or anybody that's not a citizen, if you have any type of a criminal record, there's no statute of limitation, whether 5 years ago, 50 years ago, 5 days ago, any kind of a criminal record, even as simple as theft. If you leave the United States, you're attempting to be admitted. Some of these crimes can make you inadmissible. So it's very important to speak with a licensed immigration attorney about the immigration consequences of any arrests, convictions, or anything. And please do not stay out of the US more than a couple months at a time. If you've stayed out more than a year, you have potentially abandoned your green card, and you will have to be allowed in to file an immigration court. So I wanted to, Omar John, end on that. I know we're ending soon. I'm just going to go through the flyers, really like 5 minutes on the flyers, and then open up the floor.
Let me go ahead and pull that up here.
So I have the flyers, and Omar John, I can redact it later if you want to share just the 1 through 7 of the flyers. So I'm just going to give a rundown. Maybe if people can take screenshots, because I want to leave room for questions. We have about 27 minutes. If you don't mind going to the next one, Omar John. So what are we seeing at the border? So these practices are always in place, but the border has gotten harsher now. So like I said earlier, even minor visa violations can lead to detention, more aggressive CBP tactics. People may be detained, put longer periods of time in detention. And then they have potential to check your social media and devices. دوستای ما امی کسا که از بردر اینجا که امریکا داخل میشن هر شاید که باشن آل فعلا امی سی بی پی زیادتر سوالا میکنه بسیار اگر چی گپا باشه سکندری اینسپکشن میمونه امکان است که سوالا زیادتر از پیشان بکنه امکان است که سوشل میدیا تانو چک کنن امی موضوع بسیار یک ذره فکر بکنین. Next one. وقتی که کس میخواد از سفر رفته باش sorry, I gotta go back in English. So the reentry to the US and electronic devices. So CBP has the authority not only to inspect your phones, laptops, and tablets, but just like everybody else, sometimes you might get a notice in your luggage when you get home. They can check luggages and all of that. Please keep in mind that when people say, well, I'm a US citizen, they can, you're seeking to enter the United States, so the constitutional rights don't apply when you're trying to enter. So depending on what your status is, you may see more restrictions applied. دوستای ما وقتی که شما سفر رفته باشین پس میایین یا CBP Custom Border Protection Act دارن که تلفنتان رو سعی کنن لپتاپتان آیپدتان رو سعی کنن یا گان کسا میگه که من سیتیزن هستم من اکت دارم که چیزای من رو سعی نکنن در این موضوع فکر بکنید که شما در داخل امریکا نیستین اکت پرایوسی ندارین یک زیاد اگر سیتیزن باشه یک ذره زیادتر قانونی اکت دارین گرین کارت هولدرها نفرای دیگه کمتر اکت دارن. And the next one, Omar. So, so I'm trying to read this without.
Sorry, let me get a better screen on that.
I have my glasses, I can see it.
Okay, let me know.
Okay.
If I'm on the right page.
So reentry to the US and electronic devices. I think it was, if you keep going. Yeah. So digital privacy for visa holders, which is like non-immigrant, which means So non-citizens with permission to enter the United States, including F1, H-1B, tourist visas, they're subject to the immigration laws and screening. CBP has more power to search, can ask questions, including inspection of luggage, documents, electronics. And the questions can be extensive, and if they feel like they can deny your entry to the United States, which we have seen a doctor in the Midwest who had visited her family, I believe, in Lebanon, and she was an H-1B holder, and they saw something on her phone, and they revoked her visa and sent her back. اما آقایان که از راه F1 student یا از دعوتنامه از راه دیگه میارن با کانونی یا کمتر اک دارن، یا میتونن که تلفن‌هایتون رو ببینن، باکس‌هایتون رو ببینن، هر چی که میخواین. اگر یا سوالات زیادتر میتونن که بکنن از پیشتان. اگر یا فکر بکنین که شما اک ندارین، امکان است که در وقت در میدان هوایی شما رو پس ویزیتان ریووک میکنن، باز امکان است که شما رو پس روان کنن. Next one. So lawful permanent residents may face more detailed questioning than a U.S. citizen. Again, they can search the luggages, documents. The advice is to never, ever lie to a CBP officer. Give them the information to a certain point that you need to. If you feel the questioning is too evasive, you can say, I'm going to remain silent and I need an attorney. I need to call my attorney. But that's going to, keep you in a prolonged detention, possibly. The other thing is that if you're a green card holder, they may coerce you for whatever reason to sign a form called I-407, which is involuntary abandonment of green card. Please, 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 under no circumstances should you sign this paper. They may tell you you're going to be detained for a while. This is why I was talking earlier, if you have committed certain crimes and you're coming back in, and then they say, you're inadmissible, meaning to be admitted back into the United States. And then you may be subject to mandatory detention, which means you don't sign the form and you're eventually going to see a judge, but you're going to end up being detained if you're subject to mandatory detention, which is why I keep reiterating, any record you have, it's important to talk to an attorney before you do international travel. دوستای ما، آقایان ما که گرین کارت دارن، امکان است اگه یا یک کار کرده باشن یا هیچی نکرده باشه، اگه CBP بگوید که شما یک فرم به نام I-407 امضا کنین که گرین کارتتان اعلام میتونین، شما رو دیپورت میکنن. هیچ وقت ایچی را امضا نکنین. بگوین که من میخوام که وکیلم گپ بزنم، که فامیلایتان پیش از اینکه سفر دارین که یک کس مشوره بگیرین، اسنادایتان کاپیشان رو نگاه کنه. مگم اگر شما چی را امضا کنین، باز وکیل نمیتونه که شما را کمک برسه. بسیار مهم است اگر شما امی اسنادایتان که کاپی پاسپورتتان، کاپی گرین کارتتان چیزا که یک فامیلایتان بانین، که اگر خدا نکنه که گپ شد شما را میتونه که فامیلایتان اکسس داشته باشه. دوم موضوع است اگر شما یک بی‌قانونی کار کرده باشین، پیش از اینکه سفر کردین، باز برای سفر میرین که پس میاین، امکان است اگر کار domestic violence یا چی کرده باشین، این کارا I-407 امضا نکنین. منتها امکان است که یا بگه که شما باید در دیتنشن باشین، نمیتونین که براین. از دو خاطر بسیار مهم است که شما که یک وکیل تماس بگیرین پیش از اینکه شما سفر دارین. I think the next one is the last one. So what can, we're hearing all kinds of, individuals, including, U.S. citizens who are immigration attorneys even being detained because they are U.S. citizens. For everybody, what I would say is, disable your facial recognition or biometrics access, set a strong password and a two-phase authentication. Like Arash John was saying earlier, decide if you want to use another phone. As a U.S. citizen, you may be asked, well, you have a phone and there's nothing on it. And, you can say, I have a right to have a phone. Just answer as a citizen, you can just answer, you identify your name, identify, where you travel to and your status. And if the questions get too evasive, you can say, I have the right to remain silent. As a green card holder, and then lesser as a non-immigrant visa, they're going to ask you more questions. You may potentially be detained. So use judgment. You can, some attorneys are saying, you can have your phone, have everything backed up, and you can delete some of the apps like WhatsApp or Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You want to delete it, that's fine. You can delete it if you want. You are not required under any of the categories to give them your password. If you give them your password, they can take your phone to the back and either look through it, or they can use a device to to take out information that they could be searching for. So it's very important to stay calm, do not lie, and ask to speak with an attorney. Now, they said yesterday or this morning that they will be looking at social media of everyone. So, use caution on what you're putting, maybe do private setting. They may pull up something, even if your app is closed and you don't have your phone, they may say, oh, this is you, whatever question they're asking. So again, it's really important if you are public and you have a lot of things that are in Palestine. I'll give you an example of someone who went to an interview with a client and attorney. They had their asylum interview, and they had two things they asked. The officer pulled out in front of them and said, who is this guy? It was a picture of Masood. They answered the question. The second one was, oh, why did you like this picture? It was a picture of a child in Gaza being treated. And luckily, the officer just asked questions in an interview for asylum, and then they were fine. So my point is not to put fear, but they are checking. So let's just be proactive on how you want to present yourself to the public. دوستان ما بسیار مهم است اگر شما سفر داشته باشین، بسیار مهم است که شما پسوردتان در تلفن که میکنید رویتان میمانین و رو وصل کنین، دو طرفه کد داشته باشین. اگر شما میخواین که سفر بکنین، تلفن خودتان نداشته باشین، تلفن دیگر میتونین استفاده کنین. یا اگر تلفن خودتان استفاده میکنین، میتونین که یگان اپ، واتساپ، اینستاگرام چیزها رو دیلیت کنین. شما با قانونی حق دارین که هیچ پسوردتان نتین. اگر شما پسوردتان بتین، یا میتونین که تلفنتان ببرد و تا که دیگه کل کانتکتتان و کل چیزهایتان ببینن. یگان کسا میگه که من هیچی ندارم که من پت میکنم، ببینید تلفن من. خب باز کانتکت و کل از نفرها که شما کانتکت دارین چیزهایتان میتونن که ببینن. خب تر از پیش از او اگر شما در سوشال میدیا هستین، بسیار کارا چیزا میکنین، یک ذره کوشش بکنین که همین چیزایتان پرایوت کنین. یک آقای ما که اینترویو داشت برای اسایلم چند وقت پیش، اسایلم که وکیل رفته بود، اما USCIS افسر عکسای چند تا گرفته بود که عکس کی بود؟ عکس اماچا مسعود بود. دوم عکس یک تفلک بود که در غزه می خوش کرده بودش که شفاخانه بود. آفیسر پرسان کرده بود که کی بود. بازم افسر خوب بود، کیسشان پیش رفت، کارایشان پیش میره. من نمیخوام که برای آقایان من بگم که بسیار خطر است یا چی است. من تا باید خود بفهمین. از خاطر ما اینجا جمع میشیم که در این موضوع انفورمیشن بگیریم. کوشش بکنین. امی خیرترین گپ است که شما افغانای ما وکیلا زیاد نیستن در امریکا. افغانای ما یگان دفترهای خود واس کردن. بسیار کوشش بکنین که شما شخصی که یک وکیل دیگه آل وقتای آل بسیار خطر وقت است که یک وکیل فرق نداره که افغان باشه، اگر امریکایی باشه، ترجمانا دارن کاتشان که وکیل کارایتان پیش ببرین. بسیار زیاد تشکر از وقتتان. من میمانم که 15 دقیقه مانده با سوالا. Last thing I'm going to say is please make sure you work with a licensed immigration attorney. There's a lot of scams. There are a lot of people in our community who are putting themselves out as immigration expert, immigration consultants. They're going to do a lot of damage. When it comes time for need, they're going to disappear, and you're going to be stuck dealing with an attorney, which is going to cost you tens and thousands of dollars. So it's really important you're working with the community. It doesn't matter. There's not that many Afghan attorneys in the U.S., but if you work with any attorney, they'll have translators for you. So please, important messages in this time now more than ever to work with immigration attorneys. Thank you so much. I apologize if I was going fast, and I hope that this information was helpful. Omar John.
Thank you so much, Spojmie John, Bilal John, Arash John, for all of your really helpful information and guidance. So we want to just take if there are some questions, or I guess any last words, Bilal and Arash, before we jump into questions. Anything you want to add, or we can go straight into it. Okay. And if anything comes up, you can just hop on. But so John, we're still just I think a few questions came in about folks who are like U.S. citizens, and so just clarifying, uh, what advice or what you have for people that are U.S. citizens traveling, and if someone had a question about like how it might impact their jobs and things like that. So, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, as U.S. citizens, as I mentioned, they can ask questions, as a U.S. citizen, you have a right to answer, where you travel. You have to tell them your identity, your status as a U.S. citizen, where you travel to. If the question gets too evasive, then you need to use judgment and say, as a U.S. citizen, I have right, I'm not disclosing anymore. If you are someone that's potentially someone who's got a lot of things on social media, stuff like that, maybe talked with an attorney. In terms of jobs, we are seeing people being doxxed, people, being put on different lists. It's a really difficult time. It's a balance of like, I want to advocate. A lot of people are saying now is the time for U.S. citizens to come out and advocate for people, because non-immigrants and lawful permanent residents are not. It's a personal decision, but it does potentially have negative impacts. I would say for myself, being so out there and also being a CARE National Board member, I am choosing for my safety and the safety of my family not to do international traveling for now. I am a naturalized citizen like my fellows here, and who knows what they could find down the line when I applied when I was 21 that I left out something. So use caution.
We had a question from Mohammed Azimi about children who are born in the U.S. to parents who are under P1, P2, or humanitarian parole status. So what would the status of those children born in the U.S. be? And could some of the executive orders or announcements impact their citizenship or ability to like receive a passport? So these are the children born in the U.S. to P1, P2
Yeah. So
humanitarian.
Spojmie John can answer in more detail and precisely about the law, but given the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, anyone born in the United States is a United States citizen. This goes back to the days of slavery in the United States and Reconstruction. The 14th Amendment is still the law as of today, but the administration is taking steps to attack that amendment. But as long as that amendment exists, your children that are born in the United States or American citizens can apply for passports and can, have that level of durability in their status.
I mean, I just echo what he said. Right now, there's litigation against that unless the, Congress changes it, House and the Senate, the birthright that's been there for over 150 years. You shouldn't be concerned about your children's status if they were born here. I wanted to do a clarification, sorry, with this message someone posted about, civil traffic violation, DUI. I want to be clear. I did not say if you had any traffic violation that would potentially cause issue. If you have any traffic violation, there's civil violations. You do need to take care of them because they may have, other ramifications for you. But if you have a DUI, you have a domestic violence, child abuse, you have theft, you have any type of sexual assault charge and thing, those are all criminal. Those have, even if you have what's in the legal terms a DUI and you get a wet and reckless, which is a lesser version of a DUI, yes, those are risky. So consult with an immigration attorney before you leave. And then the other question someone said is, what is the legal justification? I don't have the legal law on that, but I know that from upper end that you have a constitutional right to privacy to a certain point. You are not required to give your password. It may delay you, they may do it. Even if you don't give your password, I've been heard in some circumstances, they can potentially plug in something to extract. But I don't know, Arash, do you have more on that?
No, we saw a story this week of somebody having their phone taken away, so their device was taken away because they refused to provide the passcode. And like Bilal says in the chat, a good practice is to turn off Face ID. There's some AI mechanisms on certain apps, location services I can also ensure that Omar in the follow-up email sends I shared the Signal best practices with some other digital best practices as well.
I also, Omar John, if you're sending it to everybody, the AILA advisory on travel that I shared that we could share with the community.
Yeah, there are a lot of really great resources. Like Spojmie John mentioned, AILA has really great advisories. So do ACLU and Immigrant ARC. That's Immigrant dash ARC have put out travel guidances that people can refer to.
And we had a question on the family reunification process. Wanted to know for those who the family reunification for those who have a green card and just what the situation is on that process for people, and if there have been any changes to that.
So what do you mean, like if they're green card holders or citizens and they want to file for their family members? Or are you talking about asylees wanting to to bring in their families?
I think the question is just sort of what is the maybe both, but it's not clear in the question. But I think what people want to know, has that process changed? And they specifically mentioned for those who have a green card in the question.
Okay. So if you're a US citizen under the US immigration law, you are allowed to file a petition for your spouses, your children under 21 or over 21, parents, siblings. The different categories take a longer time. And if you're a green card holder, you cannot file for your parents. You can only file for your children and your spouse. And then you can also, as a citizen, file for your fiance. So those categories, whether you're a US citizen or lawful permanent residence, you can continue to file the petitions with USCIS and the National Visa Center, and it's a complicated process because Afghans have to find an embassy to get themselves in. Those are absolutely going forward. If you're an asylee and you need to file the I-730, that's going to trigger to get the family going. That's still continuing, as I said in my presentation. It's just going to take an extensive amount of time. With the travel ban, so like there's layers of barriers for us. So going back with the travel ban, if the travel ban is implemented, Afghanistan is on the red list, which is an all-out ban. In the first Trump 1.0, it was we had to do a waiver, a pardon. So I had some Afghan clients who were married to Iranians, and we had to do a waiver to bring them in, and it was very extensive. We have to wait for the travel ban to take effect to see what is going to be there and what are the exceptions. But to answer the question whether you're a green card holder, a citizen, or an asylee trying to bring family, if the travel ban takes effect, it's likely going to be halted, which is why people who are asking me now, can I go? Well, if you go out and the travel ban comes in as a green card holder, it may affect you. And if you're out and you're a green card holder, please get yourself back in ASAP, because we've seen where people are not allowed in. So that, I hope, answers the question.
This question is asking for SIV Afghans who don't have a passport, would they need a refugee travel document or should they apply for an Afghan passport?
Well, I'm sorry, repeat the question.
It says for SIV Afghans who don't have a passport, would they need a refugee travel document or should they apply for an Afghan passport?
So if they're SIV holders, but they've gotten a green card, or they're just SIV status?
It doesn't say in the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They shouldn't be traveling.
yeah, they shouldn't be traveling, and then it's hard to get an Afghan passport. And if you get an Afghan passport, that may potentially affect, because Afghanistan is not, in cooperation with the Taliban right now. And no, absolutely do not travel outside of the US, even a travel document. I'm telling green card holders not to travel who have more rights than someone with a travel document. Do not travel. And that's not just for Afghans, that's for anybody.
Some questions came up on what happens to some of the phones or the searches when they're taking them at the airport. Like, are there specific things that they're looking for or that they're searching for when taking taking people's devices?
Arashan, Balajan?
Yeah, it's kind of unclear what is kind of what we've seen in this essentially during this recent trend of people. There are folks who are working alongside either representing attorneys who are representing people in Palestine solidarity and protest movements, but also somebody who was in solidarity, doing solidarity work with Cuba. What I said earlier and during my presentation about not retaining any sensitive information. I mean, we take pictures of our families, fine, but anything else, I think people should get really in the habit of not keeping sensitive data or anything that could be potentially sensitive off their phone. Really instill self-deletion practices. Don't save anything on your phone that might trip you up at a port of entry at JFK, at LAX, or elsewhere. I think that's really the best general advice we can give to our community members, especially folks who are non-citizens.
And that's the same thing for applying, when you're applying for citizenship, they're going to be looking at all that.
I just want to back up, and I see Fatima John has her hand raised. I just want to back up and say the Department of Homeland Security has tremendous unchecked power, and every day they're getting more money and more power, especially if we see the Trump administration designate different organizations and nonprofits or movements as terrorist organizations. Their power will only expand exponentially. And so it's important to not give them the benefit of the doubt, right? And assume that they're going to come looking for a reason to impact you negatively. And so, like Arash said, like Spojmie said, now's not the time we're in a different era, right? And so we have to be much more careful than we were before.
And I want to pass it on to Fatima John, who is one of our co-sponsors for this event from NorCal Resist. So Fatima John, any questions or things you want to see addressed or words that you want to share for everyone here?
تشکر عمر جان. فقط میخواستم که بگویم اینجا یک برادر ما سوال کرده، فکر کنم شما متوجه نشدین. اگر میشه که میره جواب بده Spojmie جان. تشکر بسیار زیاد. امی سوالشانی است که we have a client who live in US for 4 years through US SIV program and have green card and receive an email from NVC that his green card is denied and give them 120 days that. Okay, what's your recommendation?
Okay, so I don't know if it applies to his because I don't know the specifics, but there were certain Afghans who got SIV status and then they got the green card through the SIV status. And a large number of those green cards based on SIV got a letter saying their SIV was being revoked. Their green card was being revoked because of the HR and the comma approval letter not being proper. There was a company that the US government is saying was not legitimate and these people haven't. So this individual got this letter if the green card is being revoked, and it probably says in there that your HR letter or your comma approval letter was not authorized or whatever the issue was with it. They need to speak with an attorney. I can make some recommendations for other attorneys. If Fatima John, you reach out to me privately, I can give you an email to an attorney who's handling these type of cases.
Sure. Thank you so much. تشکر بسیار زیاد از تمام معلومات. بسیار زیاد مفید.
تشکر.
So I think we're now at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. So I want to we'll go ahead and conclude here. But just want to thank everybody again for joining us today, for being part of this conversation and this webinar. We'll be having more of these, so please make sure to follow our organization, AACO, follow some of the other organizations that have been part of today's webinar for more information and to get more out there. But so this won't be the last opportunity to hear about what's going on, and these changes are constantly happening and is constantly evolving. So we just want to do our best to stay up with everything that's happening. So we will email all registered attendees a follow-up with the recording and just information to share with all of you. But just want to thank everybody for joining us today and for taking the time, and we will connect more in the future. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Are we